it's beyond damning. It's a disaster for the candidates who are not recommended to be on the ballot.
At the filing deadline, Michigan had the largest primary candidate field in state history, 10 people running for the Republican nomination, each one getting at least 15,000 signed petitions and filed with the state. Monday, the Board of Elections unveiled their review of those signatures and recommends 5 of them to be dropped from the ballot.
It looks like they depended completely on paying for signatures. In this year in Michigan, that turned out to be a very bad thing.
Over the 10 campaigns, 68,000 signatures were deemed invalid, collected by 36 separate paid workers. The petitions are full of similar handwriting and fake addresses and names. The Board of Elections is not being shy to call this fraud. The State Department does not believe any campaigns were complicit in the fraud, but it was on them to catch it before submitting.
In the end, it's their name on the form. It's their name on the ballot. That's what they wanted it to be. And they didn't follow through to make sure that they were successfully on the ballot. So it really still falls to the candidate themselves in each instance.
If the Board of Canvassers agree with the findings on their meeting on Thursday, 5 candidates will be dropped from the ballot. Michael Brown, Donna Brandenburg, Mike Markey, and then the 2 frontrunners, Perry Johnson and James Craig.
It essentially is the biggest collapse in gubernatorial primary history.
Craig had been leading in the polls for a year. Johnson had the biggest war chest. They are going to fight the decision, but time is running out. Absentee ballots will be mailed in mid-June. Brown, a former state police captain, is dropping out.
I had to make that decision.
Brown says he had no inkling his campaign was in jeopardy, but the Board of Elections threw out any signatures tied to those 36 collectors.
Unfortunately, other people's fraud affected my campaign, and so I'm disappointed for the citizens and certainly for my volunteers and family.
There is a silver lining if the Republicans play it right. There is a massive amount of support now up for grabs and a slimmer field fighting for it.
She can be beaten. And so the GOP now can kind of hit the reset button on their primary, get focused on the actual candidates who are officially on the ballot, start raising money, and start working toward being able to make this race about the GOP candidate versus Gretchen Whitmer.
Eric Lloyd, 9 and 10 News.
Yeah, Kevin, just imagine the people that lived in this home or some of their neighbors just at this point in their life, and many around the Gaylord area. This is one of the lowest points in their lives. And the last thing they need are scam artists to come in and make their lives even worse. But unfortunately, it's times like this is when they tend to pounce.
We understand that there's going to be kind neighbors and people who are offering a lending hand for free, which is totally fine. We want to talk about the people who are going to be asking for money.
Most people see this devastation and want to help. Others see it as an easy target. So it's on those looking for help to watch their backs. When getting a contractor to help put their lives back together, it's on the homeowner to do the research. Unfortunately,
get their information, get their company name, get some contact information, and do some research before you give someone money.
A legitimate contractor would never ask for all the money up front, never agreed to that. And speaking of money, there's those looking to donate it. Another easy target for scammers, spreading fake charities online.
Donate it to well-known organizations that you know are doing something and have an impact in that community and have the resources to do it.
That includes crowdfunding sources. A page may say it's raising money for a certain family, but unless you can vouch for them, it may be wise to stick with established charities.
Not only could it be someone who's just trying to take advantage of the situation, has no connection to that family or that community, but it could also be someone who has a lot of good intentions, but really doesn't have the resources to provide that money or get those supplies to those actual victims.
Helping should be an easy process, but you also want your contributions to be spent wisely.
Ask questions before you give.
Now, the Better Business Bureau has a list of approved contractors on their website that you can use when you're trying to make your decision. And then the Attorney General's website has some forms in there that you can fill out if you feel like you've been the victim of a scam. Both those links will be found connected to this story on our website at 9and10news.com. Live in Gaylord, Eric Lloyd, 9 and 10 News. Throughout the trial so far, we've heard a lot of recorded conversations between the suspects and testimony from people on the inside to get the details of the plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer. And while a lot of ideas were thrown out there, they seem to settle on 3 options: either kidnap her at the state capitol, at her lake cottage near Elk Rapids, or at the summer residence on Mackinac Island, ultimately deciding on option number 2. right here in Elk Rapids.
Then the defendants went on 2 recon missions to scope things out, one in the day and one at night. The evidence shows that Adam Fox and others involved went to this boat launch on the north side of Birch Lake to scope out the governor's house, thinking they were going to steal a boat and approach the home from the water, but that idea quickly sank. Instead, they would attack the house from the road in a side-by-side, take out her security detail, and storm the home to take Whitmer hostage. Then the plan would be to take her out by the UTV away from the inland lake and out to a private beach access on Lake Michigan. That's where a boat, or maybe 2, would be waiting to take her away by water. Now, while all this is going down, to slow down the police response, the plan was to blow up this bridge on US 31 to create a major distraction, but also to cut off the main road between town to the cottage. So let's go back to the beach, where they would then take her out on the boat into the big lake, and then they'd do one of 2 things: either leave her there stranded or take her across to Wisconsin, where they would hold a kangaroo court and hang her for treason. That part isn't clear. Where they'd get the boats, not clear. How they'd know she was at the lake house, not clear. If she's even been at the lake house since taking office, not clear. But those questions have actually been a point of defense. How can you be charged with plotting to kidnap the governor if you don't have a feasible plot? And that's been questions asked by Josh Blanchard, the attorney for Barry Croft, and he did so after court last week.
I think there was a 2-boat system, a 3-boat system, a 2-helicopter system, maybe a 3-helicopter system, or maybe they were de-escalating it by using a Kiowa. Not really clear, but then suddenly a UTV showed up. Well, I don't know.
Does a bad plan mean not a plan?
I think crazy talk is crazy talk.
So as the defense begins their case sometime this week, there seems to be 2 strategies left. Either FBI actors push this plan on the defendants, and that's entrapment, or that this plan was so crazy and fantastical it could have never worked and shouldn't have been taken seriously. It's a very fine line to walk, and one it looks like the defense attorneys are going to try to balance through the close of the trial. In Elk Rapids, Eric Lloyd, 9 and 10 News. Yeah, I want to show you something. It might be hard with the glare and with the zoom, but these 2 boys, those are my 2 boys, Ziggy and Bo, ages 5 and 3. And like many parents right now, I'm thinking about them heading off to school, where I'm hoping they're going to be safe. Now, they're not school aged yet, but they soon will be. But it also has me thinking about how Columbine was 23 years ago, Sandy Hook was 10 years ago, Parkland 4 years ago, Oxford just 6 months ago, and now Uvalde just over 24 hours ago. And the worst part is I'm skipping over dozens of more. Now, this isn't just about guns. It's a multifaceted, purely American problem that can be tackled from many different paths to chip away at the problem. And all of these tragedies, and nothing has been done. And judging by the legislative action that we saw today, it may be a while before anything is done soon. And it is a complicated issue. I get that. But me, like many parents, want to see something happen. We don't want thoughts and prayers. We don't want finger pointing. We want action from the people that are elected to do so. And maybe someday something will be done. Maybe by the time Ziggy and Bo make it to school.
There's only a few people who are in the way, and they're right here in this room.
It happens after each of these school shootings, many kind words with little action behind them.
And that's what our people expect us to do. That's our job.
Like in the Senate, Democrats look to push gun safety bills they have been working on for years out of committee and onto the floor for a vote. It was voted back into committee.
It's way too early to assign bill numbers to their grief. Let's have an honest conversation, but then let's have an honest conversation.
Gun control will always be a hot button issue, but these tragedies are more than that.
This is a mental health issue. It's an isolation issue. Probably is a social media issue. It's a bullying issue. I mean, there's so many things that feed into this.
So many options to attack the problem and so very little done.
We have also mental health supplemental bills waiting to go that they won't bring up.
I reached out to all 17 legislators in our area for comment today. Only 2 responded, and only Representative John DeMoose was willing to speak.
We added $50 million into the budget for SROs, for police officers in schools. And so I don't know if that goes far enough or not, but we're willing to do stuff.
Willing, want, need are all good words at a time like this, but done would be better.
Look who's keeping this from happening, who's stopping us from doing the things that need to be done to protect people in this state. That's on the board. Look at the board.
In Lansing, Eric Lloyd, 9 and 10 News.
When Michigan is competing with other states for these businesses and these investments, Governor Gretchen Whitmer always says the state needs the proper tools to close the deal. And in this great game of chess that this whole process is, Michigan has some great pieces, like the great weather, the low cost of living, the high quality of life, the workforce we have in the state, and of course a nice little piece, the tradition in manufacturing. But Michigan was always missing the most powerful piece, one that other states had, and that's the SOAR fund. That's money to facilitate these deals. And once the fund was created late last year, Michigan finally had the pieces to compete and win. Checkmate.
The world's taking notice. We are winning projects. People are reaching in, exploring investment in Michigan.
Despite the long history of Ford Motor Company and Michigan, they have to do what is best for them as they grow. And recently, Michigan may not have been the best choice.
We make these decisions on a case-by-case merits basis, and that's why we're here today.
Michigan missed on a major Ford investment last fall. The state was embarrassed, so the state responded and built a $1 billion fund to offer incentives and locations to bring in business and investment.
We turned that on its head by acting together and quickly and enhancing what we are able to do with the MEDC.
It paid off this week. In total, the project will be $3.7 billion and 6,000 jobs across 3 states, but more than half are earmarked for their home state.
A majority of that investment and a majority of those jobs will be right here in Michigan.
While Ford gets the headlines today and General Motors did so a few months ago, these projects have multiplier effects. The supply chain grows an estimated 3 times larger for every job created.
The multiplier in cases like where I'm from in rural northern Michigan, this is the backbone of our state. These types of opportunities and investments for generational wealth to be built.
On Mackinac Island, Eric Lloyd, 9 and 10 News.
Coming into today, we didn't know which defendants were going to take the stand, if any. Well, when we started the day, Daniel Harris decided to speak for himself. The other 3 all remained silent.
I have no comment. I'm sorry. Thank you.
His attorney didn't have much to say afterward, but inside the courtroom, Daniel Harris faced questions from both sides on his role, or lack thereof, in the plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
It's a nice kid that got wrapped into this by the government.
Grilled during cross-examination, Harris remained steadfast. He never agreed to any plot. Any talking point toward being a piece in the plot was out of context, and it was an FBI informant, Dan Chappell, who pushed the plot along, at one point saying Dan is a bitch when talking about Dan's choice to flip to the feds. Harris opened the door for his fellow defendants to testify, but each chose to pass.
I think Harris did a great job, but it didn't have anything to do with whether Brandon was going to testify. They haven't proved their case, so there's no reason for Brandon to testify.
So Adam Fox exercised his right to remain silent. That's his right, and he chose to do that.
Now the case heads to closing arguments before the jury begins deliberation. One more big win for the defense as Judge Robert Yonker agreed to include the parameters for entrapment in his jury instruction for tomorrow.
It's something that had to happen, and that's happened, so it's time to take advantage of that opportunity tomorrow.
One more opportunity to win the jury over.
We're looking forward to making our arguments and finally getting a verdict.
At one point during his testimony, Harris was asked his thoughts on Caleb Franks and Ty Garbin, previously his 2 closest friends within the group, but also the 2 men who took plea deals to testify against the other 4. Once he clarified we're talking post-arrest, he simply called them liars. In Grand Rapids, Eric Lloyd, 9 and 10 News.
I'm not a racist. I don't have a racist bone in my body.
That is what trucker Randy Bishop told 9 and 10 News Monday when asked for his response to a clip of his radio show where he made a racist comment.
We were talking about different things that people have been observing on TV commercials.
First, Bishop said the clip may have been spliced, but then said he was reading a listener's text and the clip was out of context.
I literally am talking into the microphone while I'm sitting down and reading text messages of what my audience texts into the show.
That is how he runs his shows. Instead of callers, he reads texts.
Scott and Charlevoix, haven't heard from you in a long time, buddy. I appreciate it.
When asked for more context, he brushed us off.
I haven't even taken the time to find it on my podcast list.
So we went to his archives and found the segment, March 31st in the second half hour. Bishop was ranting about the media indoctrinating children through TV commercials.
You will not believe what this country looks like 20, 30, 40 years from now if we continue down this path with public indoctrination of our kids on their socialist communist agenda. What is it? Destroy the nuclear family.
A few seconds later, he clarified how that nuclear family is being destroyed.
Now, every single commercial has a biracial mom and dad.
Then came the controversial clip.
Can't even watch a college basketball tournament without commercials telling me I have to feel guilty because I think a family should be a white mom, a white dad, and white kids. Those were not my words. I was reading all kinds of text messages into the show from my listeners.
When listening to the entire segment, he never refers to a text. These are said as if they're his thoughts, and later a listener acknowledged those thoughts.
He says, thank you for your comments about the TV commercials. If the black population is at 13%, then why are half the commercials black and white?
When asked for a further comment, Bishop ignored 9 and 10 News.
And they're going to try to do it through politics this year. Well, we got to be just as smart. Final segment, hour one. We'll be right back.
Eric Lloyd, 9 and 10 News.